Switching. All right. For those, I feel like I've talked to almost all of you. Melanie Cutland, Managing Director at Accenture, leader Metaverse Continuum Business Group, including our XR and blockchain talent. Been in this space for a long time on how do we blend new experiences. But just as an intro, and I'm excited to hear all your questions because I know you guys are all like, as a consultant, I get to talk to hundreds of clients on this topic, and so I know what people are asking for, what they want to do, what they want the industry to do. But we look at, I spent a lot of time on enterprise, like the metaverse for enterprises, the metaverse for consumers and commercial purposes, and the metaverse for industrial use cases, right? How do you think of digital twins and such? And so as we talked yesterday, it's important that this is feature rich, that has, security, privacy, and responsible by design and all of it. And so I'm happy to just hear kind of what are you guys interested in hearing more about that we didn't have time for yesterday in different areas. My top priority for my team is to actually help the Open Wallet Foundation and create a universal wallet that allows your money, identity, and objects to go from place to place to place so it actually can have useful life of the things we've been doing in pockets in different companies. Another big priority is around figuring out an enterprise-grade token marketplace that solves the responsible governance around the NFT problem that was raised earlier. So that is also a fun one of how in the world are we going to get that to happen. But I have spent time on consortium building, governance, governed and less governed networks kind of across the board as I have a definite supply chain and blockchain background as it fits. So enterprise, industrial, commercial, where do you guys want to start on questions and things? I just pick random stories to tell people.
Melanie,
Go ahead.
I have a quick question. Earlier you were talking about universal wallet. Is it really possible? Because, when you talk about money, it's really regional kind of flavors, policy with different policies and currencies and cultures and stuff. Do you really think that universal wallet is going to be feasible? Or maybe we can have something that's more universal, but on top of that, that's regional. What do you think?
Well, I think a handbag store would say a wallet can be universal. You can stick whatever you want in it, right? Like in the real world, right? The analogy to I have a wallet and it carries things. I can put whatever things I want in it. Now, I think what the Open Wallet Foundation is trying to do is create a set of standards and actually create code, right? That says here's the foundation of basic rules. Then you take that code and you apply it to your context. You build on top of it. We need lovable wallets, right? They need to delight the customer. They need to be absolutely usable and user-friendly, and that's what's going to differentiate. Why do you go to this bank or that bank? They all hold your money. Sorry, I'm not an FS person, but they all hold your money. I assume they all follow regulations and rules, right? And I've spent enough time around FS people to realize I'm still a supply chain person. I'm not converted over. But we need a lovable wallet experience, yes. And so what I think the Open Wallet Foundation is aiming to do, and this hasn't fully set out and done, right, is contribute code that you can take as an accelerator to say, go do what you need to do. Is it universal in nature of there's one wallet to end all wallets? Well, we know there's not one blockchain to win all blockchains. There's not one database, right? So I think it's a structure and a foundation, and the requirements are pretty consistent. If we want to hold digital stuff in a place that's convenient, just like our wallet is, and I have a different wallet that fits my passport than fits my US ID when I go travel, right? So in the real world, that's a normal thing. Sometimes I want a blingy one, and sometimes I don't.
So we can imagine what a mobile app looks like for a wallet. We have some examples in front of us. I haven't seen a wallet, not that I'm the expert, but I haven't seen a wallet implementation in a 3D environment. Obviously, we don't have the dexterity of our fingers to pull individual cards out of a wallet. What might a wallet experience look like in a 3D environment?
Well, I think it's a fun thought process. To age myself, the first training course they sent me to at Accenture was how to build a shopping cart in Java. So, because it wasn't a thing, right? We didn't have a utility, we didn't have a library for it. They're like, here's how to, e-commerce is all the boom. I'm now aging myself, right? We're in the middle of the .com pre-boom, and everyone needed a shopping cart. So it actually starts with user experience of what is your virtual shopping cart going to look like? And is it a mall shopping cart or is it an individual retailer shopping cart? Because right now I know I have to like buy the shoes to go see if they go with the pants and the jacket as I go through a mall, like in a virtual sense. You know, where are the boundaries going to be? You know, we've got some stores that'll let you do, you know, multi-brand if they own all the brands, right? So they'll let you kind of co-mingle things in a shopping cart. It starts with what does a shopping cart look like in 3 dimensions, and then it moves to how do I want to pay for that shopping cart? Now, how do I hit the honey button to go, is there a coupon for this, right, in my virtual environment, and then pick something already existing in my wallet that says I'm going to pay with this tool, this, right, I'm going to pay over these payment rails. And so the user experience, I do think, needs serious design, right? So we've got a team who's starting to think about what is the lovable experience for shopping, right? That kind of goes in to how do I reimagine. We've talked to brands who are trying to make a flat screen in 3 dimensions and to recreate their store. Like they want to put shelves and aisles and have people walking around, but the idea of walking is even different, right? So I think as we reimagine what these experiences do is what is the I need to behind it? I need to pay. I need to find an object and configure the object so that I can put it into my cart. I need to pick and prioritize based on how much does it add up to, right? Like the whole experience of that is different. And so I do think it will feel different. I imagine like the virtual backpack you're going to pull out and open it up and look and zoom in and say what are the items that are in it and where do I want to go and which ones do I want to pay for, which with tools. Maybe I'm paying with points for this thing and paying with a card for this thing. But Ori, you're raising your hand.
So, I mean, one of the things I like to think about when thinking about design is constraints. In the physical world, if I'm shopping in a mall, I'm walking around and carrying my physical wallet, and there's only so much I can carry in it because it's constrained by the physical environment. Like what you just said with the backpack is really interesting to me because there's this concept in the digital wallet ecosystem called like virtual wallets, like wallets inside of wallets. And it's like you can quickly imagine needing to search through a really, really large virtual experience. Like imagine you're in a virtual world and you've opened your digital backpack and it's an endless sea of credit cards as far as you can see. Like this is maybe not going to be a great experience for you finding the one that you were hoping to use to pay at the retail. And it's because the virtual experience is unconstrained by physics. Like we can make an infinitely scrolling credit card browser. Is that really what you want to have your wallet experience be? I think there is going to be a natural, because of humans and our ability to process information, there will be natural constraints, design constraints on that experience that lead to a limited number. Now, is it like 1? Like, I hope it's not 1. But is it like maybe 3 or 4, like not something exceeding 10? You know, for some things, maybe.
I see a question over here.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I find interesting is we focus a lot on the 3D aspects of this, but in reality, a lot of the metaverse components are like the interaction between human factors components and digital experience, right?
Yep.
And so what I'm curious about is we hear a lot about companies wanting to partake in like metaverse types of things, but I'm curious about like the driver behind that want,
Yep.
right? Like, is it just because they don't want to miss out, or is there actual utility that they're looking to pull from these experiences? That maybe they might be able to deprecate old experience and bring in new ones. Like what are some of those thoughts?
I think it's a perfect question because I noticed out of, I think, 5 definitions of metaverse yesterday. 3 of them had blockchain and ownership of goods in it. Not all 5, right? But I actually think the metaverse is, so we look at it as both, right? Internet of ownership, internet of place, as we have new consistent places. Places are interesting when you're doing things, but places aren't where companies create value. Right? Like this hotel is here so that we can have an event. The event is the value, the space is just a space, right? Like, and so creating new spaces I think is important because they give you a new layer of value to your, right? We're having it in this space and not in an open like lobby area because it gives you some defined space. But where I think the features and functions that come together with these immersive experiences, whether they're 2D or 3D, is where value is created. And what our clients want is finding out how to make money. Like, so we have 2 things, grow your business or become more operationally efficient. That's literally like what all companies exist to do, right? To grow your business in new places by new products, or to become more efficient so you can sell your products more efficiently, you can get them to product companies faster, right, out to customers faster, and you can close the books and pay the bills. The features and functions actually come in through things like the Web3 movement that's brought blockchain into the center of things, that digital money, digital objects, digital first products, new channels to customers. Customers are showing up in new channels, so brands want to be there, right? New digital goods are creating things people are spending money on. And so marketplace thinking is really interesting to me. So it goes back to like how do marketplaces work? As I already said I was a supply chain person, like Amazon brings buyers and sellers together in a marketplace to exchange value, right? Very simple products and services exchange value. Then there's the eBays and Etsy's, which are a little less structured, a little governed a little bit differently. You're bringing in smaller vendors who've got some reputation, right? But you've kind of got a different engagement model. You know what you're doing when you're going there. Craigslist still exists, and I was showing this at dinner. Craigslist still exists, very low governance, right? Like very low governance, but it exists for a purpose of I need to resell a bike, or we just got rid of a treadmill last weekend, right, on Craigslist, and that's totally okay. What is interesting is that the entire Web3 movement has proven that people are willing to spend money on things that are pretty low governed for the hope that it's worth more, right? There is that just, it's a bit of I think of some of these NFT marketplaces are like the Craigslist in the sky, right? Like how are we exchanging value of things? But money is changing hands. And when money is changing hands, companies are saying, how do I get a share of that market? Right? So now all of a sudden they're learning well, what was special about Craigslist that I need to make my product more like Craigslist? It's an interesting thought of if people are changing, if money is changing hands, and it's not the global 2000 changing money hands around the whole crypto community and such, it's how do I get a share of that wallet? Why do I care? And what can I offer that offers some attributes of that are governed and responsible and have recourse and have things to do? So there's new consumer behavior happening every day. So how is my brand going to show up in that new consumer behavior and provide these services and features and functions that are existing in places that not invented here, right? And so how do you embrace the not invented here and bring it part of your core value and reinvent how you want to be? It's like the retailers going to e-commerce all over again of oh, somebody doesn't need to go to my store to get, to spend their money. They're kind of seeing it as that movement, and they're literally saying it's the same as this pivot to .com was of people are spending money in places unexpected. So how do I bring them in and become part of my share wallet? And it's enterprise to enterprise and business to consumer. Enterprise to enterprise wants frictionless business. They want to figure out how to get goods moved across the world, right, with no friction, and they see that this is an opportunity in a moment to reinvent how do I engage with even just my B2B, B2B, B2C kind of side of it. Yes?
I think everything you just brought up is invaluable. To go back to your question, one thing that has been extraordinary for us as a bank is how we define a client. And to Melanie's point, historically, the way we've operated has been somewhat binary. Grow your business or increase your operating efficiency. The reality is that we are defining entities within ourselves as clients of ours, not only external clients, right? So we're looking to lines of business or places that we would have historically called a corporate support area as a business. It's no longer you have $100 million to do this function for us in the next year, don't mess it up. We now have the ability through digitization and tokenization to say, well, how actually are you doing that for us? And are you delivering the value that the $100 million that I could have used for something else would give me or deliver for us as an entity and as an entity who has limited resources which we would like to use for external clients. So what is the metaverse to us? Everything, possibly, or nothing. The reality is that we're not sure, and we're trying to find the answer to that question.
Because what you just described is part of how do you grow your business through creating new products and services that are digital first, right? Like how do you reinvent what products you offer to what customers? So you could grow your business, you can increase your customer segment, or you could offer your existing customer segment new things, right? It kind of goes back to those basics, and I think we've got new tools in the toolbox that have spent years in the labs being proven that we can now bring to life to say, I used to think about these constraints, and now I'm going to think about them differently, and I'm going to offer new goods and services. And it's got to be value led, right? In that here's how I can, like our customers every day say, how can I make money in the metaverse? Okay, well, what do you want to do? Where do you want to focus? What's a segment you're not well pushed into that you want to bring something interesting to? What does this tech do is do something different? And to be honest, that's where it becomes less immersive, and that's where it becomes more where is there a gap in the market that my brand can fill, whether I'm business to business or business to consumer, and therefore what does this grouping of tech let me do something interesting, right? It's certainly immersive when you talk to the automakers, right? Because there's just, is my silly example yesterday, and it's more of the features and functions and how do I package new types of product, digital first products, I like to call them, when we're talking to other industries. Yes.
So you mentioned sort of something that made me think about the B2C experience with the consumer consenting to a purchase. And I think that's great, like make sure you get their consent before they buy. But in a microtransaction digital world, like a consent every time you take a step in the world, like you're collecting flowers, and every time you collect a new flower, it's a prompt. And it's like, are you sure you want to store this in your digital wallet? Like after the 100th flower, maybe I just want a policy that I set that says I consent to storing digital flowers while I walk around this space. And in the B2B context, the frictionless experience that two businesses want to sort of set up together, they usually will agree, they'll negotiate a contract. Yep. It'll be one representation of a policy that they both agree to. And then there'll be a frictionless experience there. I think that's going to become a really important part of this, and it's in balance with the security consideration side, because once you've granted automation to a policy system, make sure you have to be really sure you're comfortable with that, but there's tremendous user experience benefit behind that kind of thing.
It's interesting, the scenario you did, like if you take, I think I implemented one of the first SAP Ariba contracts, like modules ever, and that is still not taken off hugely. Like you can automate your procurement contracts with all its line items and auto pay and have it shipped, and still there is and there are plenty of places where that happens fully automated with all the right things, but we know how to do approval flows, we know how to do like exceptions to policies, we know how to do this stuff in our traditional systems today, and we can't forget what we know to define a new set of engagement models, right? Like we know so much about what works and what doesn't work, and how I literally had, and I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I had a tech arc that I worked with 20 years ago on implementing a system-to-system deal, who's like, if you integrate like this, you'll have no exceptions. 20 years later, he still believed there was no exceptions. And then I walked him over and I had him meet the person where we have 10,000 people who do exception management on these systems that you do on behalf of thousands of clients, right? Because fallout still happens. Like we can't design these systems as being happy path, because we still end up having to, I think there's going to be interesting new, what does exception management look like in this world of automation, and it's a job of the future, right? We have exception management and invoice processing and all kinds of things today. There will be exception management and many of these automation programs that are kind of starting to get smart. But what I like about it is so we have an S curve, right, which is like your process flow, because you run out of room on the side of the paper, so you go back. We call them S curves, Z curves if you're from the UK. And we've been designing like process flows, picture perfect process flows, all the steps in a process flow, where it falls out, how it gets handled, how it gets back, and go through the process flow. I've been talking about, like, we could actually, with the automation we have across a multi-party system, many companies, create an S curve that goes from each organization. Because I have an S curve, you have an S curve, you have an S curve, and we all then have to like reconcile in the middle. And so part of what I think is really fun is as we're reimagining how do we want to work together, we've never done automation that actually bridges two organizations before. And so put 3 organizations in a workflow, and you could actually say, my sales order and your purchase order are the same thing. Like, they're 2 different systems, 2 different tools, 2 different technologies, but they're actually the same thing. And what does an exception look like? Well, one raised in the middle would be much more helpful because we could work out the ticket, not just 2 separate tickets as we work through. And so I think as we're converging tech, right, is the how do we get systems, if we're collaborating in multi-party virtual worlds, we're also collaborating in multi-party systems behind the scenes. How do we take some of the cues we've done in old legacy tech and bring them over here and in multi-party tech? Sorry, you had a different question.
Oh, that's okay. And like the flow, I've been kind of noodling on a question around inclusivity and digital literacy, and I think there's an opportunity out of it, but whether it's financial services, finding new digital tools to address the 40% of underbanked in the US, or health literacy among Medicare Advantage recipients, you know, what have you seen in terms of these new digital services, Metaverse, et cetera, pushing into new opportunities for inclusiveness that aren't there now and are kind of getting exacerbated?
Well, I'd love to share my why I do this, because I think that answers that question. But first, I've been in emerging tech for a long time. We always have insufficient language. The language sucks, right? So we need to write better language, and I swear we need just a bunch of marketers who can say, like, how do we make this simple and easy in the 30-second commercial so everybody can understand it? Because when tech hits that level of, like, you know, simplification, we've abstracted away the hardness and the nuance that makes it hard, then it's easier for, I think, consumers to engage. But my why, right, so I have a team that works on money, identity, objects, supply chain, learning, and commerce. Talk about 6 really important things to the world. Like, my why is to close the trade finance gap, because there's $1.5 trillion of people who ask for financing for a PO that's real who get denied, right, and who can't exist in a global supply chain. There are 1 billion unbanked people in the world, right? How do we bring them online and let them exist in the world? Like, there is learning that needs to happen everywhere, right? We are hitting that, if you've read the abundance book, right? We're hitting that stage of abundance of technology, and how does a technology movement like this, where reinventing everything, start to bring everybody back to the place so we can actually create solutions? I think it's interesting, the research we've seen from our human sciences team says that people like to show up at so if we think of inclusiveness and diversity, people like to show up in the metaverse because they show up at the age they want to be, looking the way they want to look. And it's actually those marginalized communities that are more comfortable in these standardized environments than in the real world. And so it's giving a moment to where we're all a bit the same, like there's some just simple sameness of it, right? And so I think when we can bring everyone has a voice in that way, this has to be, it is such a significant motion that everyone is relooking at their core IT stack right now. That's what's happening, right? Everybody's looking at their core IT stack. I sat with a CDTO, a Chief Digital Technology Officer, and she said, every tech I have today that I support for my customers, I want to rethink it. We're having CEO moments that we have never, like, this is a generational thing. So everyone's looking at their IT stack and they're thinking about doing it responsibly, they're thinking about doing it ethically, they're thinking about inclusion and diversity. We have a moment where we can actually change money, identity, objects, learning, and inclusion, and create something that's interesting. So to me, it's a lean-in moment, because we've got a moment where people are challenging status quo, and that creates disruption and mixes and matches of how is the value and things are going to work but not work. But, like, I don't know, my why is because I do think you can get there. Yes, Royal.
I want to kind of rewind to what people were talking about with experiences in Metaverse and backpack and all the different credit cards and things like that. But if you stop and take a look for a minute, what we do in the games industry and what we do in these current worlds, once you get virtual currency, you'll find out a lot of it, first of all, is contextual. It's not unusual to find we have 5, 6, 7 currencies that are spent in 10 different places. And when you're actually presented, you use that currency in context of where you are and what you're trying to do. So, you know, we have to stop thinking of what we have to reach in our back pocket and understand that what's presented to us, because the worst thing you can possibly do to somebody is give them more choices. The more choices, you will cripple them. You want to be able to give them the right choices of what's in context of what they're trying to do. So take that into consideration, because we deal with that. If it was as painful inside of a game to do half of the things we do in the outside world, you wouldn't have microeconomies that exist. There's no way. People are like, nah, I'm just going to trade you. Like, we'd go back to the Stone Age, you know? And so you have to think about what are the equivalences, what exists today, and what have we already done, and how does it actually impact? Because you'll find out people will spend money to get virtual currency, and they're like, oh, I just can't wait till I get that over with. Because once in the game, like, I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm spending it and how I'm going to do it, and what everything else kind of flows through. But it's not the same process of how it got there. So the biggest suggestion that I would say when we're talking about these experiences, stop thinking of what's in your back pocket and start thinking about things that can already be made aware of and what choices you present to them. Now, there are some other issues that come along with it, such as if somebody wants a sponsored card, or somebody want, you know, I mean, ad-driven is going to drive you up the wall. Like, you sure you want to use that Visa? Because MasterCard's amazing. You know, like it could happen, right? So now we have this other area that's going to come into play. These are the new jobs. These are the new opportunities. They're going to be the result of the creation, because, you know, I can't give you everything, but I can give you a choice. Well, when I give you a choice, that means I can market you. So.
I would say in your future endeavors, when you're focusing on UX and UI in a 3D space, that you know, lean into people, say, from the game industry. To his point, they've been doing this a long time. There's a lot of hurdles that have been avoided and, well, you know, and absorbed over the years that they've dealt with when it comes to making something simple and intuitive, regardless of you being in a 3D space. Some spaces and some experiences are meant to kind of emulate something where you're interacting with the environment, and that's just part of what that is, and that's not necessarily conducive to a good intuitive experience, especially when it gets complicated. I've worked on projects in the past where we've used more traditional UX designers, very talented people, but with no spatial experience, and you can see very quickly where there is a disconnect. But you know, once you know these people are taught and mentored from people who, say, from the game industry who have done these things, you could see it starting to click very quickly. You know, do y'all remember a couple of years ago, Walmart, there was a video of Walmart that came out, and it was showing kind of their virtual shopping experience, and you were literally using a shopping cart going through, and everyone on the internet tore it to pieces. Well, came out and nobody really paid attention. That was from 2017, you know, and we were doing the same things in 2017. We were practicing and trying to see what works, what doesn't. We're going to make this cool in space age. Well, no, that you find out that really doesn't work. You know, you cater to what's simple and what's practical for someone to use it, and also what's possible within the, you know, the hardware and the platform.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. A lot of the metaverse talk, just coming from the gaming industry myself, I think it almost feels like when we talk about the metaverse here, people are trying to talk about the theory of everything. And it's so amorphous, and what I think would be really helpful is to get practical. What do people want to get out of it? Because if you bring up the metaverse or blockchain to gamers, you're getting laughed out of existence right now. And so gamers know what they want and what they want to get. So how do we I think some focus on the transactions are awesome, getting in those marketplaces is awesome, everyone wants that. Yep. But how do we get and focus on getting people what they want? I think is really one of the biggest challenges this whole area is going to face.
So we have industry-specific narratives, and you know, I can go deep into any one of those, because gamers want a game. Like, that's what you want. You want a game. Like, you want to have fun, you want to explore, you want to do new things, and like you got to focus on what are the wants of your user community. Now, what I think is interesting about this is everyone else wants to bring gaming techniques into their enterprise or their commerce use cases. That's where you're getting the everything is everything, because we're seeing this bridging of industries, right? When is gaming a feature and function that's now serving other industries in unexpected ways? And the fact that we've got this cross-sharing is amazing. Like when you're actually focused on solving the problem of what do you want to do to the gaming industry to bring the metaverse to life in it, that's a problem we can solve. That's a set of focus. That's a set of domains. But what I think you're hearing here is a lot of how do we bring gaming techniques to everyone else because you guys have done something really cool and it is spilling over, right? This is the Amazon effect to the back office of like, you know, why can't I order this chair in 2 clicks and have it be here at work like I can at home? Like there was a spillover from e-commerce to enterprise. You're getting a spillover from gaming to the enterprise. And so you're hearing it a bit of everything. But if we sit and focus on what are the problems that you want to solve in the gaming industry, we can have that conversation. I think it's really interesting. And there's new value pools and new ways to incent people and new things you can do based on some of the technologies that are letting you do new things, which is different than how do I take gaming techniques and these immersive experiences and bring them to the enterprise or to the consumer to do things that aren't gaming, right? Like, and so there's a spillover of skills that's making it feel like everything to everyone, I think, to you. That makes sense.
One of the big pieces that's also a common misconception that you said, which is gamers want a game, that's actually not a true statement.
Not a gaming person saying.
It's not a true statement. And the reason is because there are actually different categories of gamers. There are people who love to play the core game. There are people who like to play the economy of the game. There are people who like to play the spreadsheet of the game. There are people who like to play on the players of the game. And so the thing is that it's kind of like you have football, but not everybody plays the game of football. Everybody plays the game that surrounds football. And that creates all the different dynamics because they may hate the game of football itself. But the statistics game of football is fascinating. It just happens they throw a ball around. So I think that's part of what we have to think about is that these areas, if we dive into them and look at, you know, the people that are around it, it's not very different from all of the other verticals that we have as regular people.
Yeah. They are, and so I did truly oversimplify your industry in too many ways. Okay. But you're not. But what I'm seeing is that you're now starting to see gaming techniques to learn, right? And so it's where you're trying to apply what's up.
So yeah, I'm going to 2 things on this. The first one is just to add, to what Royal said. Gaming, philosophically, what gamers want is engagement, and there is a psychological theory called engagement by Dr. Csikszentmihalyi that translates to everything, and it's the theory of how you get into the groove of things where you lose track of time. I did a talk on this in 1996, so these are the kind of things that gaming actually is fundamentally based on. So that translates to everything. But what I'm trying to point out, I guess, from a game development standpoint, there are people who are very, very knowledgeable, challenging the very root of what everyone is talking about here and saying, why do we need this? I literally had a conversation with people who've been in the industry for over 30 years saying, what does blockchain give me that I don't already have with databases? And it is a long divide to overcome, and these are very smart people, and so we have, I guess, at some level, a challenge to say, everyone's here is like, we're going to do this metaverse. There are a lot of smart people saying why.
I would, and I know I think we're at time, but can I respond to this one? Because this is a perfect one. You can keep doing your walled garden all day, every day. Defend your business, right? Like, in general, people can continue to do walled gardens and have your economies within your gaming systems that work. What has happened is consumer behavior has changed, and they feel like they can take everything with them everywhere. And they're going to force companies, so you're going to continue to have, like, you go to this place, your economy exists in this place, and it should only exist in this place because it's meaningful to context and surroundings. But I think what we're seeing is consumer behavior saying, I want to take my everything to everywhere. We're hearing enough people who want to invest in it in interesting ways. I think the spillover of, I want the Nike shoes here, here, and here, and I want to buy it once and carry it with me. And why can't you, gaming company, go do that? Well, fine, then some other gaming company comes up and says, I will be interoperable and I will bring it along with me, and so I can bring my goods from place to place. And they may or may not, right, change consumer behavior and somebody buys that game instead of yours. I don't know, right? But like what the sentiment is when I talk to like products companies and things that are making digital goods is they want to be able to talk to all of the platforms and make a value prop to their customers that you can buy my thing, right? The Gucci bag that was sold in Fortnite for more than it was in real life, right? Like, they want to like use it again. And so I think that's a fair customer expectation. Like, I think it's fair. And so I think that there is a moment in what blockchain did to multi-party systems, was the language we used it, that is if we think we can take goods to multiple places and ensure it's not a copy of it that then gets replicated and copied within your ecosystem, but feel confident that the ownership actually stays with the individual and the rights and obligations we gave to it, that we didn't have that before. We would have had to have a new Google show up in the middle and say, I'm going to put all your stuff in it and then I'll let you all, use it somewhere. This idea of having decentralized goods that have rights and obligations that carry with them and they can't be double spent. The double spend problem, like, does anyone know what the double spend problem is? Are you familiar with the double spend problem?
Digital scarcity.
Slightly different, right? So if I give you $1, you all, in front of a crowd, you all see that I gave you the $1. You have the $1, I can't have the $1 anymore, right? In our money ecosystems, we batch stuff up and we batch and process and settle overnight, which you could probably tell me all the reasons why I say it wrong. And I'll insult a few industries as well. No, but the idea of like, I actually know that I gave you the $1 and it's done, and the $1 only exists once and only once, and I can't copy the $1, right? Account-based money, you could copy it because it could be in different statuses in different places, in different places. So the double spend problem is solved. So if I have one Nike and I can ensure that I'm not double spending my Nike and spawning a million instances of my Nikes, then I actually have confidence as a products provider that I only have it once and only once, and that I have rights and obligations embedded in that good that can be used in only certain ways, right? So I make sure my Nikes don't show up on something that they codify into the rules of the product. So that is different, right? That is different than when you probably wouldn't share your Gucci bag if it was just logged in a database with another game provider, because you would never know that you didn't have 100 Gucci bags once you gave them the right, like once you moved it from here to there, then it can be copied, right? This idea that you actually have securitized or tokenized ownership of something means it exists once and only once with the rules and obligations you give it. So you didn't have that before. So do you want to use that as a feature? You don't have to, but it might have value. And once somebody's used it in one place, they might want to expect it somewhere else. That's all that's changing.
So I know we're running out of time, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm not trying to be difficult.
I love debate. Royal wanted debate. So good. Okay.
I think some of the things that we're all saying, because there's all these different layers of technology, are fundamentally flawed. So as an example, I consider NFTs fundamentally flawed because you don't own an NFT; it's only a receipt. So period. So the whole misconception of buying something through an NFT, real big problem. And I think a good way to sort of close this off. There was one talk, I can't remember which one. All these people are trying to get into Web3 because they missed out on Web2 and they don't want to miss out like they did on Web3. They have no idea what Web2 is, and they certainly have no idea what Web3 is. But what Web3 does is give ownership, and the whole focus of ownership and what ownership means is really the key function of what it can bring to gaming and what it can bring to everyone else. But the actual discussions of what ownership means is so difficult that we're avoiding those questions, and I think that's a real place to focus.
And maybe to wrap.
So in the world of finance, we trade in receipts. The whole thing is built on a model of receipt. Proof of purchase. It's a contract. It's proof that I handed something over value in exchange, you handed something back. Whether it's in the form of a stock certificate or in the form of a bond, a derivative of the two, a combination of the two. The entire thing is a series of receipts.
So, and maybe just because I didn't use the word NFT, well, I did say NFT, but like what I think is interesting is we are creating digital goods, right? And digital goods could have rights and obligations, but the entire infrastructure behind it, there are good implementations, there are risky implementations. The idea of decentralized, and I'm just going to do it for fun, Royal, because we talked about this, like the idea of being fully decentralized and ungoverned has risks, and it has all kinds of challenges, right? And so I've used governed and ungoverned, less governed networks, right? There is a ton that this industry needs to do, which is why open source matters. Because if we can get some of these, how do we distribute information? How do we share value? This is all a value sharing moment, right? Like, how do I want to represent the value that gets exchanged and I have recourse, right? Like, we need to get there as an industry. There's so much more that needs to be done to get to the aha of we can all just move things around and feel confident about it. But the point is we're are engaging with less governed networks and goods as well as more governed things, because traditionally consumer products and banking products were just let the experts do it, and now it's everyone's engaged. And so this participation economy is part of why we call Metaverse, right, Web3 plus like immersiveness together is a different set of consumer expectations, that they're willing to engage in marketplaces in different ways and unexpected ways and let the regulation catch up. And so it's a movement, whatever you want to call it. It's a time to reflect and rethink what do you want, and I think it's a fun time to shape what do you offer consumers along the way.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I would love to take these conversations up later because I'm running out of time. But I didn't mean to be difficult. I just think there's a lot to talk about here.
There's a lot left to be done, and there's a lot like lean in, like lean in for sure. All right, I'm getting the official red card. So. Thank you.